I don't know what I'm talking about. Oh, that was quick. Another 2-minute beat. A lot of short beats today for some reason. So I think I'm going to repeat some of the sentiments that you guys said in the chat. Overall, I think what I would say is that obviously the cornerstone of the beat is that main loop. I assume that's a loop that you downloaded off of a splice type of site or whatever. And you had some variation in it, which is nice to see. There were certain sections where you sort of tried to reverse the sample a tiny bit in certain sections, and you also had like a stuttering effect here and there. Overall, in terms of the arrangement, though, there wasn't like a huge overhaul in terms of the overall arrangement. There wasn't like a sort of A section and a B section. It still felt like you were looping the exact same thing, but you just obviously had little sections in the beat where there was a little bit of variation, so I'm going to commend you on that and say at least you're pushing yourself in that regard. But I still would like to see more complexity in the overall arrangement in terms of here's the verse section, here's the hook section, that's going to feel a lot bigger, here's a bridge. Just try to push yourself in that regard to try to understand how to make a beat bigger, smaller, and try to change the energy level of a beat a little bit more. I think the beat would have been served a little bit better with a little bit more complexity to the drums. I think who was it in the chat that said this would? I think it was Dylan. Yeah, he said, Dylan M said, I feel this would work better with boom bap instrumentation. I think the overall idea is something that I sort of agree with, in that the drums that you chose, they were very basic and very minimal. There weren't very out there types of textures. I mean, compared to like the very first beat that we heard with like the SpongeBob sounds in it and all these little cool sound, like these synths and stuff, you guys can sort of get the idea of what I was talking about, where obviously that might have been too much for your taste, but nonetheless, having these sort of out there unique types of textures that come into your beat can really help it become a little bit more, I guess, more of a unique beat overall. And so if you just have, the typical hi-hat, here's a typical snare, here's a typical kick, it's going to be very hard for the beat to sound interesting overall. I sort of think that's what Dylan was also reflecting. If the textures that you use for the drums are a little bit more interesting, that might have been something that would help the beat sound a little bit more unique as well. I think, like I said, a little bit more complexity to the drum sounds or even the drum pattern would have served the beat. And so, yeah, it's hard to gauge where you are at in your overall development. I do want to commend you for at least trying to create some variation to that loop. But I don't want to just let you rest on your laurels. I want to say push yourself even more to try to come up with the overall structure of the beat, and not just having a 2 minute beat where the same thing loops and loops over and over again, where you just have these small little variations. I sort of do want bigger ideas and more complete, full thought out ideas out of you guys. So that's something that I want to push you guys to do. Hits nice, clean mix. That's true. I will say that there wasn't any like disgusting overlapping frequencies. It was a very clean cut mix. Again, though, I think part of the reason why is just because it was very minimal. It's going to be pretty easy to have all your sounds be very separated when all you have is a hi-hat taking up the high end. Then you have your snare, which is very thin because it's a trap snare. Then you have your 808 in the low end, and nothing's conflicting because the sample takes up that mid-range. So it's going to be a little bit easier to mix the beat if you have just a little bit less going on.